The Carolina Hurricanes are going to have yet another offseason of a lot of turnover. Andrew and I dive into the Hurricanes' upcoming free agents and who should stay and who should go in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Monday afternoon. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Andrew. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing well. Coming to you from a beautiful, picturesque Lion Lake up in Michigan.
Let's hope you have a better trip home from Michigan than I did a few months ago and not get stranded in the airport for 26 hours. So that was, if you're there and you know about that, you know, but we aren't going to spend a lot of time on that today as the Hurricanes have yet another offseason full of free agents and who they should decide to keep, who they should decide to let walk. So it's going to be a repeat of the past few years. But yeah, we do have a lot to get through, so we're going to dive on in. But first and foremost, a lot of the guys with the Chicago Wolves we aren't going to be talking about just because that's such kind of a coin flip. We do have a couple guys we are going to mention, but as a whole, those guys, it's a coin flip. You could see him staying, you could see him going. It's just, again, it's a coin flip with those guys. So diving into the first one, Max Pacioretty. This is one that a lot of folks are talking about, whether or not they should keep him, whether or not they should let him go. Now, personally, I am in the camp of letting him go. And it's nothing against him at all. In the few games he did play, he looked really darn good. But, just he had 2 Achilles tears within a year. And, really, within I think it was like 7 months, 2 Achilles tears. It's just the injury aspect of it, and it's not one I really think the Hurricanes should, you know, it's not a risk I want them to take. Now, again, because in the few games that he did play, he did look really good. So, and evidently there's interest from Max Pacioretty to stay, given that was several months ago when that came out. But if they were to do like a 1 or 2 year with a very low salary, maybe like 1 million, 2 million AAV, I could be okay with that because it's very low risk. But as a whole, I definitely think they're gonna let him walk in free agency.
I tend to agree. I agree with you that it's possible he comes back at a lower salary, especially if that's something he wants and he wants to be here and he wants to try to make his comeback here. But it's a big risk. He's a great player. I mean, there's a reason they went out and got him in the
Hmm.
offseason last year. When he's healthy, he's one of the best scoring wingers in the NHL. But you look at he played well under half a season. Even before the Achilles tears, the year before in Vegas, he played well under half a season. He's now coming off those 2 Achilles tears in a year. He's a significant injury risk, and you have to wonder if at this point that guy who was one of the best, scoring wingers in the league is still there. If he still has the same ability and he's going to be able to come back the same. And if you're the Hurricanes, I'm just not sure that's a risk you can take with a group that's so close to winning the Stanley Cup. Needs to add some legitimate, reliable, and by reliable, I mean like able to stay on the ice, goal scoring to try to get over the hump. I don't think you can devote too much of your cap space to Max Pacioretty. And the other thing is like there's a finite number of roster spots here. So if you bring back Max Pacioretty, is he cool with being the 13th forward and maybe getting a chance if he shows that he can still be that guy and you bring in somebody else?
Yeah.
then okay, maybe that's it. Max Pacioretty's a heck of an insurance policy to have still, but I'm just not, and you heard Don Waddell say it that the Hurricanes have to make sure they don't get caught waiting on something that maybe isn't there. And I think that's ultimately the approach they're going to take. And I feel like a guy like Max Pacioretty hits the open market. Some team out there is going to be willing to maybe offer him like 1 year, 3 million. Hope he can stay healthy. Hope he can recapture that previous form. And I'm just not sure that's something the Hurricanes are going to be willing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it is nothing against him. Again, when he is healthy, he is a really darn good player. It's just he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and I just don't think it's a risk the Hurricanes need to take. Again, if he'd be okay with being the extra guy and taking like a 1 year, 2 year kind of deal, and obviously a hefty salary cut. Again, I think 2 million AAV would probably be the max for that. Then okay, because that, like you said, that's a heck of a extra guy to have. But again, I just don't see it. I just don't see that being the move for the Hurricanes. Now, moving on to the next one, the captain, Jordan Staal. We've talked about this one already in some previous episodes. We both think, yeah, he's staying. He ain't going nowhere. Now, is it going to be another 10-year extension? No. Obviously, they don't do those anymore, but is it going to be a max deal? No, it's not gonna be. I definitely see it being probably in the 2 to 3 year range. Maybe if the AAV is right, 4, but it's gonna be, again, a shorter term deal. It's not gonna be a long-term deal. He is also gonna be a guy that is not gonna be making the salary that he was. He's not gonna be having that 6.5 million cap hit like he did. Again, I do think they're gonna give him, because of him and, how long he's been here as the captain, that's gonna give him a little bit of a pay boost, of course. But I'd see him being 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3, million AAV. That's what I'm thinking with Jordan Staal. He's not going anywhere, but he's not gonna be making the amount he was, and he's not gonna get the term that he was last time. But you look at a guy with his age and the miles on his body, you expect that kind of thing.
Yeah, I certainly agree that Jordan Staal is going to be back. He wants to be here. He's the guy. He's the captain. He wants to try to win a Stanley Cup here. The Hurricanes want that. You hear from Rod Brind'amour on Ovius and Giglio last week about how much he wants him back. You hear it from Don Waddell at exit interviews. You hear it from Tom Dundon in multiple different interviews. This is going to get done. This isn't going to be a big problem. I wouldn't be shocked even if this is done sooner than later.
Mhm.
You're saying 2 to 3 years, I could see that. I would almost lean more towards a 1 year deal. Jordan Staal is 34. He is kind of getting to the point where his career is winding down. I could almost see him kind of being one of those guys where it's just kind of an understanding that he just gets a 1 year deal each year as long as he wants to keep playing. But he that gives him the chance to kind of make that determination at the end of every season now of, okay, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to retire? You said 2 to 3 million. I think that's right. And, it's a pretty big reduction from his previous 6 million cap hit, but he still brings a lot on the ice. But given where he is at now, age wise, I think it's the right money. And plus, he's been making 6 million for 10 years, so he's kind of set in that department. But yeah, I think Jordan Staal still has a lot to offer in terms of his leadership. Still the top guy on the penalty kill, his two-way play, playing against other teams' top forwards. You saw what he did in the home games in the New Jersey series of effectively making Jack Hughes and his line mates a non-factor. So yeah, I don't expect there to really be any issues here in terms of being him back, but I'm leaning more towards that 1 year deal, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. The reason I said 2, 3 years is because he is, what'd you say, 34. So he's got a couple good years left in him. And that's why I'm saying 2 to 3. Once he kind of hits the late 30s, that's when if he is going to keep playing like his brother, it's the 1-year kind of veteran minimum deals at that point. Now, again, we got a lot more guys to get through, and we will continue to get through those guys. Who's going to stay, who's going to go, right after this quick break, folks. Now, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available for U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Now, diving back on into the Hurricanes free agency, one that a lot of folks are talking about as well, along with Max Pacioretty and Jordan Staal, is the goalies, Freddie Andersen and Antti Raanta. Now, we have talked about these guys a little bit already in the past few episodes, like with Jordan Staal. But, we're going to continue talking about them, starting with Freddie Andersen. I'm gonna say he stays. I think he's if he didn't have the playoff he did, then I could see him, the Hurricanes just deciding to part ways. But because of the playoff run that he had this year, I think that in itself earned him a contract extension. I am thinking for him, it'll be probably in the 2 to 3 year range. He is on the wrong side of 30, also a bit injury prone. So I don't see them, handing him, a super, long term deal, 5, 6, 7 year deal. I don't see that with him. It's 2, 3 years. That's what it's going to be for him. I could see salary wise, he was at 4.5. I definitely think he goes down a little bit, but not a lot. I could see it maybe in the 3 to 3.5 AAV. That's what I'm thinking with Freddie. 2, 3 years, 3 to 3.5 million.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on what I think they're going to do with this one. I think personally, I lean towards bringing him back because, like everything you just said about that great playoff that he had, I think you're probably not in a point where you want to totally hand the reins to Pyotr Kochetkov just yet. And like we've discussed, you've got some time to make that decision because of that 4x2 AAV they signed him to. That 4 years term when him buys you a lot of time. I think that they would like to bring him back. I think he would like to be back. The question is, does his playoff performance make him and his representation feel like he could get a raise from what he's making now on the open market? Because I would probably do just an identical deal to the one that he just finished, 2 by 4.5. You have him and Pyotr Kochetkov. You're essentially keeping the same total cap hit for your goalies, $6.5 million. That gives you plenty to spend on the rest of the roster, which the Hurricanes are certainly going to need both this year and in the years to come with the extensions coming up. If his because look, you never know what can happen in the open market, and if his representation is like, hey, this great playoff, maybe we can get 5 or 6, then I think the Hurricanes probably let him test free agency. You've seen how this front office has operated, especially with the goalie position, with guys like Peter Mrazek and Alex Nedeljkovic, who were pretty productive their last year with the Hurricanes, saying, we don't think we want to pay these guys what they're paying. And outside of a few players, anyone's replaceable. So if Frederik Andersen is willing to sign a similar contract to the one that he just signed, I think he'll be back. If he wants a raise, I think there's a good chance that the Hurricanes let him test free agency and look elsewhere, whether that's potentially bringing Antti Raanta back to go with Kochetkov or bringing in somebody else. But so, yeah, I'm about 50-50 on that one, I think.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the total cap hit between Freddie and Kochetkov. So yeah, I could totally see it being an identical deal to what he was already on. I didn't even think about that. So yeah, I could see that as well. Totally. Now Antti Raanta, we'll just kind of skip ahead of my list to him. He is one I am probably going to say I'm going to say he is going to go, but it's a very soft go, because I could totally see him being back as well. Like you said, if Freddie Anderson, decides to test free agency and leaves, then Antti Raanta 100% will be back if he hasn't already signed somewhere else. And then, if they aren't fully confident in Kochetkov being the number two or 1B type situation, whatever they decide to go with, I could definitely see Antti Raanta coming back as well. Because once again, Don Waddell said that Anderson and Raanta both want to come back and both want to be here. So that's obviously a good sign. Now, if they do bring him back, I believe we've already mentioned this on a previous episode, but it's worth mentioning it again because I did not like how they structured their contracts whenever they signed these guys, of both being UFAs at the same time. I did not like that then, and I don't like it now because you see of what it's such a big question mark of what they're going to do. I don't like that. I think if Freddie comes back and Raanta, if they both come back, Raanta will get 1 year less than Freddie Anderson. So say Freddie gets 3 years, Raanta will get 2 years. Freddie gets 2 years, Raanta gets 1 year. I see them staggering those contracts. I don't see them, doing the situation of they're both UFAs at the same time. I didn't like that then. I don't like it now. As far as his AAV, I could see it, kind of being comparable to what he's on now. I think he's earned that from the Hurricanes. Uh, but again, the term is going to be the question mark if Antti Raanta comes back, because again, I did not like them, having them on identical term deals whenever they signed them.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that's a little bit less of an issue now because you wouldn't be looking at potentially having to replace 2 NHL goalie spots just because you have Pyotr Kochetkov. Now, that's assuming he continues on his trajectory. I mean, goalies are
Exactly.
extremely volatile. I mean, we don't know what, if anything, Pyotr Kochetkov's going to be in the years to come. I lean Raanta walks. I think Anderson is my preferred option to
Yeah.
bring back. I think Ranta's played pretty well with the Hurricanes, but I don't like the idea of Raanta and Kochetkov as your tandem because I
Oh yeah.
think Raanta has shown that, especially in the regular season, he plays a little bit better in either a pure backups role, making fewer and farther between starts, or playing in like short spurts of games, but not a ton of games in a row. Um, Whereas I think Frederik Andersen's a little bit more capable of handling that workload. Obviously, we have no idea what kind of an NHL workload Pyotr Kochetkov is capable of handling, and I don't like the idea of like his first year is really a true NHL guy of saying like you want 50-50 starts between him and Antti Raanta. I think there's a lot of things that can go wrong there. If Frederik Andersen walks, then I could see maybe the Hurricanes circling back to Raanta as their other option. But even then, I'd probably prefer that they look to the open market to maybe get a guy who can handle a little bit more of a workload. So I'm nothing against him. I think he's played really well for the Hurricanes. You saw how well he played in most of that first round series against the Islanders. I'm leaning fairly strongly against bringing Antti Raanta back, just because I don't think it works in the structure of what the Hurricanes are trying to do with that position going forward, especially in tandem with Pyotr Kochetkov.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I'm definitely leaning more towards the walking for him. It's essentially kind of like the Max Pacioretty thing. Like if it's right, if they need it, then sure. But it's definitely one, like you said, Aranta, Kochetkov, tandem, definitely not the most ideal. And he's definitely a backup goalie. That's nothing in terms of his play because he can play. We've seen it. But it's kind of my same criticism I've had with Freddie Anderson, but amplified is he's on that wrong side of 30. He's very injury prone. He's his body just physically cannot handle that number one goalie type workload. Because and again, it's nothing against him. It happens. They're regardless of the sport. Some guys' bodies just can't handle that starting role, and that is what it is. They wouldn't have the backup position if they didn't need it. He wouldn't have been in the NHL as long as he had if there wasn't a need for him. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But I am with you. I'm definitely seeing him, probably putting Raleigh in his rearview mirror. But now on to the next guy that I think we are both probably going to be pretty confident is in testing free agency and leaving is Shane Gostisbehere. He already said that he wants to test free agency, and said the Hurricanes are an option, but like you mentioned a few episodes ago, he's never really had that chance to test the open market to see what he can get. So yeah, I definitely see him walking. Does he come back? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, the Hurricanes are going to make him an offer. What it will be, I don't know. But I'm definitely confident in saying he's going to be gone.
I think there is a slim to none chance that Shane Gostisbehere is back in a Hurricanes uniform next year, simply because I don't think they're going to want to spend that much on a guy who's going to be their number 3 left defenseman. He was really good in that role for them after the trade deadline, formed a really good third pairing with Jalen Chatfield. I think he would be a second pairing defenseman on a lot of other teams, and I think he's going to want to get paid as such. And ultimately, I think he's going to get paid as such because you look at the free agent pool for unrestricted free agent pool for defensemen. There's not a ton there. There's a good chance that Shane Gostisbehere might be the number one guy on the free agent market if he
Hmm.
goes. And he's probably going to get northwards of 5 million from another
Hmm.
team on the open market. That's just the way free agency works, especially with defensemen, because you don't have a lot of great options. He's a guy who can move the puck. He's a guy who I think, um, I mean, maybe this part of this is the Hurricane system playing a little bit more sheltered in a third pairing role. I think looked a lot better defensively than his reputation. He can quarterback a
Yeah.
power play. He played really well for the Hurricanes. I just think he's going to get more on the open market than the Hurricanes can give him. He's kind of that it's that kind of move you can make at the trade deadline when you bring in a guy who's a little bit overqualified for a spot. Like he's a little bit overqualified for a third pairing, and that gave them really good depth. But it's not sustainable to keep that going forward because you can't pay a third pairing guy like a second pairing guy. The only way I could really see the Hurricanes bringing Shane Gostisbehere back would be if, say, with one of these potential trades that they look to make to bring in a scorer, if they end up using Brady Shea, with his value so high coming off the best year goal scoring wise of his career, though they've already, you've heard Don Waddell and Tom Dundon both talk about wanting to extend Brady Shea. But if those talks go south and they don't see him in their long term plans, then maybe they say, okay, maybe Gostisbehere is a little bit cheaper. We bring him in long term as our number 2 left defenseman. But barring that, I think he's gone.
Yeah, I agree there. Now we do have our first RFA, and that is Jesper Puljujarvi, the Bison King. Again, he is an RFA, so the Hurricanes do have a lot more leverage here. He's obviously not going to be a guy that's going to get an offer sheet. And I could see this one's tough because he is an RFA. I He didn't really do a whole lot. Uh, So I'm definitely leaning more in the go category for him. Uh, but I think if they do, keep him around, it's definitely like a 1 year deal. It is not going to be long term. It's going to be like 1 year, 1.5. Like it's not going to be a big deal at all.
Yeah, and the thing with him is I think his qualifying offer is at least 2 to 3 million. So I think he's a guy that you would see as an RFA. They're not going to qualify him because he's not
Yeah,
getting that from them. It would be in terms of not qualifying him, letting him become a UFA, and then circling back and signing him for 1 year and cheaper. I would let him go though. I mean,
yeah.
it was the right idea at the time. You got him for virtually nothing. Talented former top 5 pick, but he
It
just
just didn't
didn't
pan
bring
out.
much. He struggles to finish. Well, I mean that's an understatement. He cannot finish. I mean he's not a scorer. And I go back to the finite roster thing. I mean, you look at where are you playing him? You've got other guys who are going to be young guys like Jamison Reese, Vasily Ponomarov, who are potentially going to be knocking on the door for the Hurricanes. I would rather have roster spots open for those guys than continuing this experiment with Puljujarvi. I would cut bait there.
Yeah, I would as well. And there are a lot of other guys to dive on into, and we will do that right after this quick break, folks. All right, we are back, and it's time to keep talking about the upcoming Hurricanes free agents. And, we have our first retirement in my book, and that is going to be Jake Gardner. He is finally at the end of his 4-year deal that he signed here. He has not played for 2 seasons because of injuries just piling up between his back, his hip, and just about everything for him. And yeah, I think he's gonna be a guy. He's probably just gonna call it. I think he hasn't played in 2 years. It's not a good look. Yeah, if you're wanting to continue playing, and I think he's just gonna go ahead and call it a career after this one. It sucks that it did not pan out the way all of us expected it to, because I remember whenever that signing happened, a lot of folks were excited about it. But yeah, it has not panned out the way they had originally planned. The fans, Hurricanes front office, Jake himself hasn't panned out. But yeah, I see him being a guy. He's just going to call it a career. Same with Andre Kasha. It didn't pan out the way he wanted. Injuries have continued to pile up. He played 1 game this season and then has missed the rest of it due to concussions. I think at the end of the day, these two guys, they need to put their health first. They made lots of money throughout their NHL careers, but they need to consider their quality of life post playing. And I think these guys, they're just going to go ahead and call it a career.
Yeah, I think definitely with Jake Gardner, it's unfortunate that that didn't work out because you saw flashes that first year and in the second year before he got hurt of what he can do in terms of a puck moving defenseman. But yeah, no, it just didn't work out. I agree. It's unfortunate that the back injuries have robbed him of these last 2 years. But I think for the sake of his future health and quality of life, it's probably time for him to hang it up. I'm mostly lean that way with Andre Kasha as well. When you have that many concussions in a row, that becomes pretty scary because you're prone to have another one and have worse effects from it.
Mhm.
Just because he is so much younger, I could see him maybe trying to give it another go. I don't think it'll be with the Hurricanes.
No.
Um, if it is, I mean, either of these guys, if they wanted to try to make a comeback, it's not going to be here. But yeah, I think that those are definitely two guys that need to consider their future health and the decisions that they make.
Yeah, I agree. And it sucks to see careers, in that way, and these guys not be able to end their career on their own terms and being forced into it. But you know, at the end of the day, again, they got to do what's best for them long term. Now, one that you have talked about several times over the past few episodes is Jesper Fast. Now, he is definitely a guy that I think we are both in the camp of Hurricanes bring him back. He has been very underrated for them, and he has came up clutch several times for them. And I'm definitely saying, yeah, he stays here. He is, I believe, he is 31 years old right now. So he's just on the other side of 30. So I could see him getting a little bit of term with his deal. Again, kind of unlike Jordan Staal, he is getting up there. He's in his mid-30s. Jesper Fast, I'm definitely seeing he's staying for sure. I could see him being in about the 4-year range. That'll kind of take him into his mid-30s, kind of where Jordan Staal is right now. And as far as salary wise, he's currently at 2 million. I could see him staying kind of in that range, in the 2 million range, maybe a little bit more, maybe hitting 2.5, 2.75. Uh, but he is more of a depth guy, so I don't see him getting more than 3.5. Yeah, so I definitely think he stays for sure, because he has been really stinking good for the Hurricanes over the years.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that 3-year deal that he signed, 3 years ago is about to come to an end. But yeah, he's been, I think, everything the Hurricanes could have hoped. Really good teammate, phenomenal defensive winger, great penalty killer, really good two-way player, good fit for Jordan next to Jordan Staal on those shutdown lines that have been so effective for the Hurricanes. He's capable of providing a little bit of depth scoring, playing on the power play in a pinch. He obviously scored some big goals in these playoffs. If it were up to me, he would most certainly be back. Probably on a relatively similar deal to what he's on now. I'd maybe go like 2 years, 3 million. I'd go a little bit more on the money to get less term, just because you have to be really careful if you're the Hurricanes adding too much term past this year and next, just because as you figure out contract extensions for these guys like
Sure.
Sebastian Aho, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, and oh, by the way, 2 years from now, Jacob Slavin is going to be a free agent. That's not going to be cheap. Um,
Yeah.
so you kind of have to watch yourselves a little bit there. In terms of if I think he'll be back, I'd probably lean like 60-40, 55-45 that he will, just because the way this Hurricanes front office has operated the past couple of years. There have been these middle six winger guys that we've all perceived as really, and they were valuable to the Hurricanes, guys like Nino Niederreiter, Brock McGinn, that this front office was ultimately ended up being willing to let test the market and ultimately sign elsewhere. So that would be my only word of caution, that there's certainly precedence for the Hurricanes letting this type of player walk. I would bring him back, but I just wonder, does his playoff performance bump up his potential dollar ask a little bit? And if it does, do the Hurricanes potentially let him test free agency? Because again, this front office has been pretty rigid in terms of offering guys what they think they're worth and not really budging from that. So that would just be my only word of caution on this one.
That is definitely true. We have seen that before. Like you said, that wasn't something when I was, going through the list, I was just, thinking about Jesper Fast and what he did for the Hurricanes this year. But yeah, there's totally precedent for guys that you think would be sure things to stay, like Brock McGinn and Nino Niederreiter. You thought they would be sure things to stay, and that wasn't the case. But we are about to hit our rapid fire go round now, and that is Paul Stastny. He's gone. Calvin DeHaan, he's gone. Dylan Coughlin, he is definitely gone. And then Derek Stepan, he is probably going to be gone as well. If you remember with Coughlin, or excuse me, not Coughlin, DeHaan and Stepan, they're both on PTOs, and then they got themselves the 1-year deals that they were on. And now that I am thinking about it, with needing that third pairing defenseman, out of all of them, I would say Calvin Hahn would be the guy that could maybe stick around on probably similar to what he's on now. Not a lot of money, not a lot of term. And I think that's more so, if they realize, all right, we aren't going to be able to get Shane Gostisbehere. We aren't going to be able to, really get a trade that's worthwhile. Then I could see DeHaan being back. But yeah, out of the rest of those guys, I could see them being gone. Derek Stepan, maybe he stays, maybe. Again, similar deal to what he's on now, but as a whole, all those guys, I'm definitely thinking they are on to new homes.
Yeah, I agree. For the similar reason that I talked about earlier with Jesse Puljujarvi, you look at letting guys like Stesny and Stepan walk from the bottom six. That opens the door again for guys like Reese and Ponomarev. I promise I'll get that one right by September. Um, to try to push for spots on the Hurricanes roster, get a little bit of an infusion of young talent in there. Calvin
Mhm.
DeHaan, yeah, Coughlin. There's not much to say there. I under no disrespect to him. I understand why the Vegas Golden Knights made him a throw-in on the Max Pacioretty trade. I'll just leave it at that. Um,
Yep.
Calvin DeHaan, I think, is a better fit as a potential seventh defenseman. I think you want somebody who offers a little bit more at this stage of their career, playing on that third pairing next to Jalen Chatfield. So you try to recapture a little bit of what you had with Shane Gostisbehere there. DeHaan and Stepan are both the kind of guys that I can see like they're probably going to be unsigned, late into the summer, into the off season. That the Hurricanes are sitting there in August, September, and they think they need another depth defenseman or another depth forward. That then they could circle back and bring those guys back. But I certainly don't think they're going to be in any hurry to do so as free agency opens in July.
Yeah, I agree there. I don't see, either of those guys, being guys that you really see coming back. Especially you look at the two defensemen of Calvin DeHaan and Dylan Coughlin, very much like last postseason with Ethan Bear. They didn't play this postseason, and I think that was pretty darn telling heading into free agency that there's a good chance they won't be back again. They did make that Shane Gostisbehere trade at the deadline, so you do factor that in there. But Coughlin, he barely even played this season. He was always in the press box, if he was even at the games, to be honest. And it's those are guys I definitely see them being gone. But yeah, like you said, Dahan and Stepan, come, late into the offseason. If they're still unsigned and the Hurricanes feel they need someone, then I could definitely see them being guys that make their way back here. Now, again, as we said at the top of the episode, a lot of the Chicago Wolves guys do feel that those are kind of coin flips of, whether they stay, whether they go. But do have a few that I want to mention here, and they are names that we, of course, have seen in Hurricanes jerseys, starting with the newest one of Mackenzie McEachern. Uh, I will probably say, yeah, he would stay, but it's pretty soft. Yeah, I could definitely see him, going. But, with how he played in the playoffs, I could see him, getting, a 1 year deal. I could see that with him. But again, it's not one that I am like, all right, yeah, this is a lock. It's same with the other two I have here. They're by no means locks to stay. Max Lajoie, he's another guy that I think will stay. The Hurricanes have kind of leaned on him a bit. Whenever defensemen have gotten hurt, he tends to be quite often the first got defenseman that they do call up. Especially now that Jalen Chatfield has just been on the roster full time. But Lajoie, we've seen him, over the past couple seasons of what he can do for the Hurricanes, in that pinch. So I could definitely see him staying. And then finally, Ryan DeZingle. I could see him coming back. And with him, I do think it'd be like another 1 year deal. I don't see it being long term because he missed so much time due to injury this season. I could see him, being like, I want to get, another year in. Um, and really, see, what I can still do in terms of that way. Again, all these guys similar deals to what they're on now. I don't see any of these guys getting, crazy raises or super long term or anything like that. I think if they stay, they are on similar deals to what they are on. Because one thing with the Zingle that I was excited for at the start of the season is like, oh, you have him down in the AHL now. So and so goes down, you can call him up, and he's already a NHL caliber player. For the most part, again, he's had a couple down years as of late, but he's a guy with a lot of NHL experience. So bringing him back up, that was something I was really excited for, but we didn't get that this year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But again, those three guys, I see them staying but none of them are locks, and they'd all be on similar deals to what they are on now.
I think the thing you have to keep in mind here, though, with guys like that is the Hurricanes are probably not going to have an AHL affiliate this year.
True,
So they are
true,
not going to, they're more so just going to need places for their prospects to go play. They're not going to
true,
have an AHL roster that they have to fill out with those
true.
veteran type guys. I could see a Max Lajoie type staying maybe just with the Hurricanes as their number 7 defenseman if they feel comfortable with that. If they get, um, go out and get another really reliable guy for the third pairing. But like guys like Ryan Dzingel, Mackenzie McEachern, I'm not sure there's really going to be a place for them in the organization this year, just given the uniqueness of what the Hurricanes are going to be dealing with without an affiliate.
True. I did not consider that. I had totally forgotten that they likely won't have an affiliate. I mean, anything can happen. Yeah, for all we know, later on today they can announce a affiliation with another team. We just don't know. That's well above our pay grade and what we know how to do. But we'll just have to wait and see on that. But again, yeah, that's something I didn't think about with any of the AHL free agents. Like a lot of them are RFAs. So we'll just have to wait and see with those guys. But yeah, the lack of an AHL affiliate is definitely going to make that stuff interesting, and will make for an interesting season next year as well. As far as who's going to go where, whether it be Ryan Dzingel, Max Lajoie, Mackenzie McEachern, whoever. It's going to be interesting to see where these guys end up if they do stay with the Hurricanes organization. But that is all of the notable free agents for the Hurricanes. Let us know what you think is going to happen with these guys, whether they're staying, whether they're going, what deals you think they are going to fetch, whether it be from the Hurricanes or someone else. Let us know down in the comments on YouTube. Tweet at us at LO_Hurricanes. Myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96. And Andrew at ASchnit53. I just realized I made another typo in my Twitter handle. So that's fun. But again, as always, guys, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Monday afternoon. And we will talk to you in the next episode. And as always, let's go Canes.